When I was 6 years old, I had posters of Captain Kirk and the Enterprise in my bedroom at home. I was just a fanatic for the show.
I was a young kid growing up in Salem, Ohio, Friday nights at 8 o'clock trying to figure out which star was going to become the Enterprise.
This is the original series that started not only the franchise of Star Trek, which is huge, but if you trace the roots back, I mean, this really is groundbreaking even in the sci-fi genre.
It touches everyone's life. It's such a part of the zeitgeist of America and really the world at this point.
At that time, when it was aired, the visual effects and all of that stuff, it was captivating.
This was our chance to go back in and digitally remaster the prints, clean them up.
And we went back to the original camera negative, so we're going back to ground zero. I mean, what they used to shoot this is what we got our hands on to transfer it.
This is the scanner we used to scan the film from film to digital. So basically what you see there is kind of a raw image from the original camera negative. Once we scan the film in, we just build some contrast into the image to give it a more appealing look. So this is kind of an example.
What you do not know and must now be told is that my command orders on this subject are precise and inviolable. No act, no provocation will be considered sufficient reason to violate the zone.
When we first put up the negative, it had been put up quite a few times for other transfers. So there was a fair amount of dirt on it.
There was tears, scratches, stains, so we'd go into Inferno, Flame, some high-end boxes. Anything we could throw at it to make it better, we pretty much did, and really spent some time massaging it and really bringing it up to where it needed to be.
The way this computer works is that it takes frames that are before and after, and it will basically create a frame with the information from both frames. This is especially easier for static shots where there's no movement. If the stain is in a moving situation, I change the tools and use the same procedure, but I'm telling the computer it's a moving frame rather than a still.
We do a lot of work on scratches, tears, film warping. Anything that's too extreme for the other machines, I get to work on by hand, and that's not including coloring.
You're home. You can even stay if you want.
But we're not here, neither of us. We're in a menagerie, a cage.
No.
And then we also decided that we had the opportunity to upgrade the music. We went back into the library, got the original arrangements from the 60s, and re-recorded them with the same voicings and basically the same arrangements.
Star Trek is the most famous theme that Alexander Courage ever wrote, but he also worked quite a lot on MGM musicals of the 1950s. He wrote the score for The Left-Handed Gun, and also for a number of other television series, but Star Trek is and always will be his most famous piece of music. Gene Roddenberry brought Alexander Courage in during the shooting stage of the original Star Trek pilot. He actually brought him onto the soundstage and decided he wanted to write a theme that would suggest out there the far reaches of space. And he remembered hearing an arrangement of Beyond the Blue Horizon, the old song from many years ago. And he sort of emulated that. The idea that it was a grand, moving out there kind of theme was always part of the musical concept of Star Trek.
Okay, percussion, here comes bar 8.
Greg Smith has reorchestrated this, worked from Alexander Courage's original orchestrations.
We've assembled a band of 28 players, 29 players, to re-record the original Star Trek theme. Here it is, woodwinds. By and large, it is Courage's original arrangement and orchestration. We're trying very hard to emulate the original and pay respect to Courage's original score.
He's assembled the same size orchestra with the exact same makeup of woodwinds and brass and percussion.
Horns, please. In that day and age, in the 60s, a TV band was 23 to 29 players, and we're right in the middle of that here today. There's two versions. We're going to start with the one that has the soprano on the second half. And our soprano is with us. Her name is Elin Carlson, and she's in a room right off to the side there in the studio.
And the use of a soprano, which Gene Roddenberry insisted on in the original theme.
We're doing this to update the audio. It's the 21st century, and recording techniques have changed massively since then. A lot of these players I selected because they played on the Star Trek TV shows, the contemporary ones. And I worked on that a little bit too, and I thought, well, those are the people that probably could best serve the re-recording of this theme. And they have a vested interest in Star Trek.
I think that those of us who think and breathe and talk about television music never thought this day would come, that we would ever actually be able to hear the original music played live again in the exact same arrangement as the first composer wrote it.
Here it is. Quiet, please. 2, 3. Being very truthful and faithful to the original notes because it's sacred, hallowed ground, this theme.
Space, the final frontier. These are the voyages of the Starship Enterprise.
When we wanted to go back and redo the music, actually one of the difficulties was how were we going to have Shatner doing Space, the Final Frontier? And we went back and looked and searched through hundreds of boxes of elements and actually found that original track as a separate element. So we're able to use William Shatner's voice from the 1960s on top of music that was recorded recently to mix them together, and it sounds fantastic.
To boldly go where no man has gone before.
That's the great thing about this is original negative, original charts, and we took everything back to the very beginning.
Captain to Galileo. All systems cleared for takeoff.
And then we started thinking, what else could we do to make the show look as good as it can? And in looking at the show, the one thing that sort of stuck out was that the effects were the best they could do in the 60s, but we could do so much better now. So we started thinking bigger than just cleaning up the prints, and we decided to take a big shot and replace all the exterior special effects of the show with current CGI computer-generated ships.
So when they came to me and said, would you like to do this? I had some reservations. Logically, I was thinking, well, I don't know if I want to change the effects. But inside, I was going, do it! It was visceral.
The three of us, Dave, Mike, and I get together where we take the episode and we break it down, then it's passed on to CBS Digital, and then another level of conversation happens.
We screen the episode with them, we talk about it. Of course, they put their input in. So we go through this entire process with them. They start creating animatics, which are shots of the Enterprise that are very basic in construction, just to give us a sense of how the Enterprise is moving around a planet. It's all kind of wireframes. And once we approve these shots, then the shots are rendered out.
Star Trek is its own creative entity. It's its own consistent universe. We're very deliberately not trying to make things that look state-of-the-art. We're trying to build upon the style of the 1960s. When Gene Roddenberry first started work on the original Star Trek, one of the first people he hired was Matt Jefferies. He knew that if you didn't buy the Enterprise, if that starship didn't look right, you simply wouldn't buy the show.
That's one of the reasons it makes it so real, is that Matt really believed in that the Enterprise was a character and it was a place where you could live and work, and I think that came across.
Jefferies approached the Enterprise that it had to be instantly recognizable. It had to be distinctive, even when you only saw it just swoosh by. He took Roddenberry's descriptions. He knew that somewhere between the hardware realism of NASA and the fantasy of science fiction magazines. Somewhere in there was the starship.
Part of the thing that's fun about the Enterprise design is that it melds male and female parts. It's got circular areas and it's got tubular areas. It's got all these different shapes that work together. It's not a ship that you're afraid of when you see it, but it's also not a weak ship. You don't look at it and go, well, that's a pushover. You look at the Enterprise and you immediately feel that sense of aesthetic that makes you say, that's a nice place, but that's a cool place too.
We're breaking free, sir!
In the context of the show, seeing the Enterprise pull into orbit around a planet, you get the feeling that they're there to help, but watch your step because, we have teeth.
In 1 hour and 45 minutes, the entire inhabited surface of your planet will be destroyed. You have that long to surrender your hostages.
And that's a very cool, unspoken thing that is said about the Enterprise.
You wouldn't do this. Hundreds of millions of people. I didn't start it, Council. But I'm liable to finish it.
When we started the project and we looked at the hill that we needed to climb, and Mike and Dave and I and David LaFontaine, we were all on the same page.
Engage.
And our goal was, it's not about what we want to change. It's about respecting the original material and thinking about what the artists back in the 60s would have done if they could have done it.
When we're watching these episodes, we always have to have a balanced opinion about what we're going to do to it. In the original series, we counted 17 stock shots of the Enterprise, and that's it, unless it's something episode-specific that they created. We never go too far from what they've done, but we've done some fun stuff with rivet scraping shots where the Enterprise is very close and passes by this way, and different shots of it from below and different shots of it from above. When we want to show the Enterprise in a vulnerable position, we'll shoot it from high up, so you're looking down on the Enterprise. When we want it to be heroic, you're looking up as it passes by. When we go into it, some shows require a lot more work than other shows. An example is, in Naked Time, the opening shot in the original episode, there's some stock footage of Everest or something. I don't know what it is. You come through some clouds and you see this mountain. So we added the base. We had them create the outpost, and we have one light lit in a window, and that's where they beam into. And it just adds a dimension to it. Here you have an outpost on an alien frozen world that's dying. It's all those little things that bring the audience into what's happening in the show.
The only way to get that door open is to cut through these wall circuits here.
When they're all trying to get into the engineering section because Riley's taking over the ship and he's driving everybody crazy with that damn song.
And tears bedim your loving eyes.
Scotty is cutting with a phaser and you don't see a phaser beam.
He's firing his phaser and there's sparks coming off the wall. We were kind of hell-bent on making sure that Scotty got a phaser.
So that's one of the things that we wanted to make sure that we did.
If this works, the satellites we orbit will produce light of such intensity that even someone in a closed, darkened area will be affected by it.
I like to sit down and listen to every single thing that everyone is saying. It's a little piece of dialogue that can really make or break what we do from a visual effects standpoint. For instance, in Operation Annihilate, there's a point where Kirk walks onto the bridge and Mr. Sulu says,
Completing the seeding orbit, Captain. 210 ultraviolet satellites now in position.
What we wanted to see is the Enterprise stringing those satellites. And we're really locked to the length of the cut. We can't really change things, but we sometimes slide things a little where we can. What we did is we created a shot of the Enterprise traveling around the planet, popping out the satellites. And they had these strobe lights on them. And one of the things that Mike suggested early to me was, why don't we have, on the bottom of the secondary hull of the Enterprise, there are these painted images. There's a rectangle, there's a circle, there's a square. He said, what if those are bomb bay doors? And I was like, no, we are not, no, cannot give the Enterprise bomb bay door, that's crazy. But the more I started to think about it, the more I started to realize that we should do this because it shows another capability of the Enterprise that no one's ever seen before. In Arena, we had a chance to do a lot of stuff. When they beamed down to the planet in the opening sequence.
Kirk to Enterprise. Red alert. What is it? Cestus 3 has been destroyed.
You'll notice the background plate It's a close-up of a dented piece of metal. But as we started to watch it, Mike and Denise knew instantly, like, oh yeah, it's a hunk of metal, we gotta change that. So you'll notice that we did. We also added kind of a ring of buildings behind them. If you look in the background from where they are, there are buildings that extend off into the distance, which is kind of cool. In that matte painting, we added a crater, and this place was supposed to be savagely attacked.
Weaponless, I faced the creature the Metrones called a Gorn.
And then the Gorn blink, of course. We would have loved to add a few more. That was a last-minute thing. It was a time crunch, so we were able to add 1 or 2. But again, it's just a little thing that brings the Gorn to life.
Kirk here, what's going on?
When we got to Corbomite maneuver, there's the cube.
Have a look at this, Captain.
The cube, that mysterious cube that you see at the beginning of the episode, we wanted CBS Digital to recreate that almost exactly.
We gave it a little more sense of dimensionality, I think. And that also gave us a chance to do some fun stuff with the Enterprise, different angles where we come around the back of the saucer to see it, instead of just this kind of stagnant side view that they would do.
Phaser crew, stand ready.
Then later on, when we see the Fesarius, and especially when we get close to the Fesarius, you'll see there's a level of detail that you hopefully always suspected was there, but now we're going to show it to you.
If you look really hard, you can see the structure underneath each dome.
Not overtly, but just to create a level of detail that probably should have been there to begin with.
We tried to stay as close as we could to the original, but still souping it up.
I think we have a real UFO in our hands.
Tomorrow's Yesterday is an episode that, when we were doing it, we realized the meat and potatoes of this is going to be the Enterprise in orbit around Earth back then. There's these great shots of looking up at the Enterprise and seeing it kind of damaged and moving off, coming through the clouds of Earth, and shots from underneath, and Captain Christopher's F-104. And that's where, initially, when we were doing the breakdown, we were all giddy.
J4, you should be close enough for visual contact.
I can see it now. Whatever this thing is, it's big.
And as we watched the episode, we forgot about the whole slingshot effect. And when we got to it, as we were watching the episode, we were like, oh, wait a minute, this is a whole chance to do something really cool. And we had the sun grow very slowly, even though the Enterprise is flying really fast, because we wanted to get a sense of scale of the sun. It's not a planet.
Mr. Spock.
Since we've passed Mercury, the sun's pull on us has increased greatly.
When we had it going around the sun, the close-up of the Enterprise normally flying like this, we gave it this. And initially the sun was rounded. I wanted it flat. I wanted the sun to just be this wall of energy.
5, 4, 3, 2.
Now, Mr. Sulu.
It's a really energetic sequence of shots as the Enterprise is trying to break away from the gravimetric pull of the sun, and it's just one of those great Star Trek moments, and we just had a lot of fun doing it. It's one of my favorite shots.
This is Gene Roddenberry's television show. This is Matt Jeffrey's television show. This is the work of the original writers, the original editors, the original directors. We're trying to respect their choices.
And we just feel very fortunate that we've been given this opportunity to, in our own way, kind of take care of Gene Roddenberry's creation.
When I saw the DVDs with the original film now converted to the way it should have been, I can't find words to voice my joy at what I see. It's just wonderful. It's the way the show should have looked when it first went out.
There are legions of fans who love this show, who are very concerned about us doing anything to the series, and we're very cognizant of those concerns and trying to be totally respectful to the material.
I can't put it into words how amazing it is to be working on this and to do what we hope is honor the original vision of Gene Roddenberry and all those people who worked on it way back then to suck us in the first place.